She was sold to a stranger so her family could eat as Afghanistan crumbles, but Parwana's laughter disappears as she returns home, a small hut with dirt walls, where she's reminded of her fate. She's being sold to a stranger as a child bride, but her parents say they have no choice. For 4 years, her family have lived in an Afghan displacement camp in northwestern Badghis province, surviving on humanitarian aid and menial work, earning a few dollars a day. But life has only gotten harder since the Taliban took power in Afghanistan on August 15. As international aid dries up and the country's economy collapses, they're unable to afford basic necessities like food. Her father already sold her 12-year-old sister several months ago. Parwana is one of many young Afghan girls sold into marriage as the country's humanitarian crisis deepens. Hunger has pushed some families to make heartbreaking decisions, especially as the brutal winter approaches. Day by day, the numbers are increasing of families selling their children, said Muhammad Naim Nazim, a human rights activist in Badghis. Lack of food, lack of work, the families feel they have to do this. An impossible choice, but he felt he had no choice if he wants to feed his family. The money from Parwana's sale will only sustain the family for a few months, before Malik has to find another solution, he said. On October 24, Corbin, the buyer, who only has one name, arrived at her home and handed 200,000 Afghanis in the form of sheep, land, and cash to Parwana's father. Corbin didn't describe the sale as a marriage, saying he already had a wife who would look after Parwana as if she were one of their own children. Was cheap, and her father was very poor and he needs money, Corbin said. She will be working in my home. I won't beat her. I will treat her like a family member. I will be kind. Absolutely cataclysmic since the Taliban's takeover. Stories like Parwana's have been on the rise. Though marrying off children under 15 is illegal nationwide, it has been commonly practiced for years, especially in more rural parts of Afghanistan. And it has only spread since August, driven by widespread hunger and desperation. More than half the population is facing acute food insecurity, according to a United Nations report released this week. And more than 3 million children under age 5 face acute malnutrition in the coming months. All the while, food prices are soaring, banks are running out of money, and workers are going unpaid. Nearly 677,000 people have been displaced this year due to fighting, according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Many of them live in tents and hubs in internal displacement camps, like Parwana's family. It's absolutely cataclysmic, said Heather Barr, Associate Director of the Women's Rights Division at Human Rights Watch. We don't have months or weeks to stem this emergency. We are in the emergency already. The problem is particularly acute for Afghan girls, who have stayed home and watched their brothers return to secondary school since the Taliban takeover. The Taliban said it is working on a plan to allow girls to return too, but have not said when that could happen or what conditions may be imposed. The uncertainty combined with rising poverty has pushed many girls into the marriage market. As long as a girl is in school, her family is invested in her future, said Barr, from Human Rights Watch. As soon as a girl falls out of education, then suddenly it becomes much more likely that she's going to be married off. And once a girl is sold as a bride, her chances of continuing an education or pursuing an independent path are close to zero. Instead, she faces a much darker future. Without access to contraception or reproductive health services, nearly 10% of Afghan girls aged 15 to 19 give birth every year, according to the UN Population Fund. I don't want to leave my parents. The buyer had dragged Magul's father, Ibrahim, to a Taliban prison and threatened to have him jailed for failing to repay his debt. Ibrahim, who only goes by one name, said he promised the buyer he would pay in a month. But now time is up. I don't know what to do, Ibrahim said. Even if I don't give him my daughters, he will take them. Magul's mother, Gul Afroz, feels just as helpless. I'm praying to God these bad days pass, she said. Like Corbyn, the buyer claimed he would not mistreat McGull and that she would simply help with cooking and cleaning at his home. But the reassurances ring hollow in the face of his threats against McGull's family. I really don't want him. If they make me go, I will kill myself, McGull said, sobbing as she sat on the floor of her home. I don't want to leave my parents. He is prepared to sell the girls for 100,000 Afghanis each. Zayden, the 4-year-old, with wispy bangs and large brown eyes, said she knows why this is happening, because we are a poor family and we don't have food to eat. Their grandmother, Rukhsana, is distraught. If we have food and there is someone to help us, we would never do this, Rukhsana said through tears. We don't have any choice. International funding dried up. Local Taliban leaders in Badghis say they plan to distribute food to stop families selling their daughters. Once we implement this plan, if they continue to sell their kids, we will put them in jail, said Maulaway Jalaluddin, a spokesperson from the Taliban's Justice Department, without elaborating. But the problem stretches beyond just Badghis. And as winter approaches, both the Taliban and humanitarian groups are pleading for more aid, hoping it could stem the rise in child marriages. Countries and multilateral institutions have been reluctant to renew pledges for fear of appearing to legitimize the Taliban as Afghanistan's leaders. With the country's economy close to collapse, UN donors pledged more than $1 billion in humanitarian aid in September, of which $606 million would meet Afghans' most pressing needs. But less than half those pledged funds have been received, with some member states who have not yet paid, according to an OCHA spokesperson. By not releasing the funds that they are holding from the Taliban government, it's the vulnerable, it's the poor, it's these young girls who are suffering, Carlson said. The Taliban has also appealed for aid. The Taliban is asking aid agencies to come back to Afghanistan and help these people, said one Taliban director of an internal displacement camp in Ghor province. I'm requesting the international community and aid agencies, before the winter comes, to please come and help. Corbyn said he will use his daughter as a worker, not a bride, but Malik knows he has no control over what happens to her now.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.